20 more Nintendo Switch ports you should buy for your collection. After the success of my last video with this topic of 20 ports that you should buy for your Nintendo Switch, I'm going to do another one of these videos, so here we go. Number one is the Metal Gear Solid collection. So the Metal Gear Solid collection, in my opinion, is one of the best collections out there because it comes with 5 games available, and 3 of those games, in my opinion, are 3 of the greatest games ever made. Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3. Best games ever. Literally, they are so great. Story-wise, character-wise, gameplay-wise, incredible games from start to finish. Really, really do recommend you play them if you haven't already. The fact that they're on Nintendo Switch as well is such an amazing thing. Metal Gear Solid 1 is the first game in the series, and while it's a PS1 game and might look a little bit outdated these days, the story for that game is incredible. The story of Shadow Moses and all of the different characters you come across who are usually the villains in this game. And then this kind of whole process continues into the second game and into the third game as well. And each game expands on the last and gets better every single time, especially Metal Gear Solid 3. Literally the best in the series, in my opinion. The last 2 games you also get with this collection are the original Nintendo Entertainment System games, Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2. While they're okay, they're not amazing games, they are interesting to play because of the history that is around the Metal Gear Solid series. Next is the Klonoa Fantasy Reverie collection, and this comes with 2 games. The first game from the PlayStation 1 and the second game from the PlayStation 2. I'll be honest with you, I've never actually played this collection. I've never played a Klonoa game. However, I have seen footage of these games, and I think, you know what, they do actually look quite good. They are big step-ups from the original versions. These games have been completely built ground up. For example, like the Spyro Reignited trilogy or the Crash Bandicoot N. Sane trilogy. These games have been built almost like those games where they are built for the current generation of systems, and this game is available for Nintendo Switch to play handheld. And yeah, I think if you're gonna get into a new 3D platforming style game, this is quite an interesting one, as there's a lot of history behind Klonoa, and there's a lot of games. I feel like Klonoa is this kind of hidden character in the mascot genre of characters. The next game is the Outer Worlds, and this is basically Fallout in space. That's the easiest way to talk about this game. If you've ever played Fallout New Vegas, Outer Worlds is a game that was made by the developers of Fallout New Vegas. Yes, there are space battles and obviously adventuring in space and interesting quirky quests to find, and that's exactly what the Fallout series is. And if you like the Fallout series, you might enjoy the Outer Worlds, as it's basically Fallout New Vegas in space. I would argue that this game is actually more entertaining than Starfield. I've not played Starfield, so I'm going to probably eat those words, but I think from what I've seen after watching footage of Starfield and seeing how barren that game has been this year and seeing how interesting the Outer Worlds actually is, it's kind of like No Man's Sky in a way, I guess. Probably not as big as No Man's Sky. I guess, yeah, the Outer Worlds is just more of an RPG that I think I could get behind personally. So yeah, it's on Nintendo Switch and it runs pretty well. Next is the Doom series, and if you have ever played a Doom game, especially now the Dark Ages has been announced for Xbox Series X and PS5, I think this is the perfect time to play the Doom series, and you can get the majority of the Doom series on Nintendo Switch. For example, you can get Doom Eternal, which to me is crazy. That game should not be able to be played on Switch. You can get the other Doom games as well. Doom 64 is also another title you can get. Doom is just a really interesting series because it's almost like the original first-person shooting game. It's the game series that really set the foundation for what a first-person shooting game should be, to see the history of where first-person shooting games came from. And I think Doom is easily one of the most influential series ever. So if you can get them on Nintendo Switch, really highly recommend picking them up, because yeah, they're just great, interesting historic games, and I think you'll enjoy them if you play them. Next is probably the most recent game on this list, and this is Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. And Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door is interesting because it's a remake of a GameCube game, which I've not played. I have seen people play this game. I keep saying this in my video, and I apologize if this isn't what you want to hear, but it's kind of, this is from my experience of seeing and hearing things. The Thousand Year Door is iconic, really. It's a game that many people consider to be one of the greatest Nintendo games ever made. Really influential as well. I think the influence from the Paper Mario series is really impacted the Mario and Luigi series, for example, just as Super Mario RPG really influenced Paper Mario. A lot of people really consider The Thousand Year Door to be one of the greatest JRPGs ever made, and the fact that it's been remastered recently and it's been updated with new graphics and new gameplay styles and basically just everything that you would expect in a remaster, it's there on this version on Nintendo Switch. Next is Metroid Prime Remastered. This is, in my opinion, one of the greatest games of all time. I really love this game. I really, really do. As a game, it's just incredible. Atmosphere, gameplay, visuals, story. Even though there's not that much of a story in this game, it just feels right. Everything is perfect in this game. The fact that Nintendo took their most ambitious series in Metroid and turned it into a first-person 3D action-adventure puzzle dungeon crawling game and made it work, to me it's an enigma. Like, how did Nintendo do that so well? And they've proven it through Metroid Prime Remastered. And Metroid Prime Remastered, in my opinion, is the best looking game on Nintendo Switch. If you've ever had an argument with someone about Nintendo Switch being bad at graphics and doesn't compare to the Xbox Series X or PS5, I honestly really recommend just try showing them Metroid Prime Remastered and show them how good that game looks. Especially on the Nintendo Switch OLED, if you're showing them handheld, really do show them on the OLED, because the game looks incredible. Atmosphere, music, they got Samus right in this game. They got the Metroid universe right. Everything about it, like I say, the music is incredible. The Magmore Caverns theme is something that has been stuck in the back of my head for many, many years. It's just one of those games, and I really do recommend that if you've not played it yet, go play it. New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, that is a mouthful. Not the best Mario game in my opinion, but it's still a really fun time if you want a game with a few people to play. You know, it's 4 players and it's basically Super Mario Wonder before Super Mario Wonder. It's from the new Super Mario series, which did kind of die over time. I think the more games they released from that series, the worse they got, personally, in my opinion. This version of the game comes with New Super Luigi Bros. As well, which is something that is very rare. New Super Luigi Bros. Is kind of like the New Game Plus of this game, in my opinion. And while it's a bit more difficult, it's fun. You get to play as Luigi through the whole game, and it's interesting. Yeah, so it's basically 2D Mario. If you've never played a 2D Mario, I really do recommend at least trying this one, because this was a launch title for the Nintendo Wii U, and we all know how hard that console bombed. Like, it just died on day one, like no one brought it. So a lot of people missed this game. I feel like it wasn't the best game to launch with, but over time I feel like it's one of those games that has picked up kind of traction with Mario fans, because it's more accessible now on Nintendo Switch, so I really recommend picking it up. Lego City Undercover is a GTA clone. It's a Lego GTA clone. If you've never played GTA, if you've never played a Lego game, this is how I explain it, I suppose. It's basically Lego story with GTA gameplay. that's basically what it is. However, this game isn't like cops and robbers in the sense of you commit crimes and run away from the police. Lego City Undercover is a game where you play as a policeman and you go undercover. It says it on the tin. You go around this kind of Lego City world. Lego City is the kits of Lego that come with like buildings and fire stations, airports, police stations. It's that kind of kit, and this is basically a game of Lego City. It's interesting to be in that world because you get to explore this 3D world that is a open world game, I suppose, an open world Lego game. And that also moves me on to my next game, which is also Lego Marvel Superheroes. I actually played Lego Marvel Superheroes a few years back, and it's a really, really fun time. It's kind of like the MCU before the MCU was this big, massive anomaly of characters and crossovers. Lego Marvel Superheroes really gives you the opportunity to explore Brickhattan, I think it's called in this game, Manhattan. It's basically Lego New York, and you get to explore everything as the different Marvel characters. So you can play as Spider-Man, you can play as Iron Man, Hulk, Wolverine, Hawkeye and Black Widow. The iconic characters that are Marvel characters, they are all here. I think even the Guardians of the Galaxy are here, and they weren't even a big character at this point of this game when it was released. There's lots of obscure characters in this game, and they all get utilized very, very well, because in Brickhattan you get to use every single character to solve a different puzzle or stuff like that. It's really, really fun, and I really recommend the Lego Marvel Superheroes game because it's also got a great story mode as well. The story in the game is really fun. It's really entertaining. It's a great introduction to Marvel as a whole as well. If you're bored of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, maybe try Lego Marvel Superheroes, because it's kind of like its own thing and it's actually really fun. So Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 is the first games in the series of Baldur's Gate. Last year, Baldur's Gate 3 ended up becoming the game of the year, which is crazy to me because I'll be honest with you, I had never heard of Baldur's Gate before Baldur's Gate 3 was released. Yes, I'm crazy. But Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 are on Nintendo Switch. So if you've been playing Baldur's Gate 3 and you love the game, I know it's like this kind of Dungeons and Dragons kind of style game that every decision you make is played on chance from a dice roll, which is really interesting to me. I'm not really a Dungeons and Dragons kind of person. I feel like Dungeons and Dragons isn't really my scene, but I can really see why people like the style of storytelling and gameplay that a Dungeons and Dragons style game could give. If you've played the third game, you might be interested in playing 1 and 2. These games are available on Switch. The price of this game went really high after Baldur's Gate 3 became like one of the most popular RPGs in the last 10 years. So yeah, really check out Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 if you can find it. You might find your next favourite series. I tried to make these honest. I don't like faking or telling lies about games. I don't like saying, oh, I've played this game when I haven't played it, because I just, feel like that's not honest and it's not the real me. I want to show off my experiences and talk about them and how I feel about games even if I've not played them. That's kind of the whole point of these videos, so I hope you're still enjoying it if you got this far. Next up is L.A. Noire, and L.A. Noire is a Rockstar game made by the people who made GTA and Red Dead Redemption. L.A. Noire is the detective game that takes place in the 1950s, and yeah, it's an interesting game. You'd expect it to be like this gangster game where you fight the mafia and stuff like that, but it's definitely not that at all. L.A. Noire is this really interesting game that has only really been done once, and I don't think we'll ever see a game like L.A. Noire again. This concept of a game of being, you play as this detective and the whole gameplay revolves around interrogating people and going around this open world and trying to figure out how these crimes were committed and talking to people, figuring out if they're lying or telling the truth, and looking for clues on the scene of the crime. This game was really before its time, in my opinion. They used motion capture for the faces in this game, and sometimes you can kind of tell and they look a bit silly. It's not often that they look great, but it's kind of the whole concept of the reason why they did that was because they want you to try and figure out what these characters are thinking and how they are feeling. You're the detective. The game does a really good job of making you feel like the detective in the game, because every choice is your choice. Every clue is picked up by you. You have to note down what you feel is the right things, and you can actually make mistakes in this game. You can send the wrong person down if you really want. This is what's so interesting about the L.A. Noire detective style gameplay. Freedom of feeling what it's like to be a detective and the pressures that you have, and it's an interesting game for that. Next is Red Dead Redemption, and talking about Rockstar games, Red Dead Redemption is one of the best Rockstar games ever in my opinion. Incredible game, incredible cowboy game. Takes place at the tail end of the cowboy era, the Wild West era. You're kind of like living the life of one of the last cowboys before they went extinct. This is that interesting concept of a character who's trying to find redemption from the crimes he's committed and all the bad deeds he's done. This character basically falls into the trap of falling back into that. This is the very basics of a GTA style game, and Red Dead Redemption is basically Grand Theft Auto in the Wild West era. It's a game that takes place mostly on horseback or carriage and basically do everything that you'd expect a cowboy to do, inspired by the westerns that we watch like Once Upon a Time in the West and The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. This is what Red Dead Redemption is. It's just such an iconic game, and Red Dead Redemption 2 is even better. Unfortunately, that game is not on Nintendo Switch, and I don't think it ever will be, because that game is a highly demanding game. The fact that Red Dead Redemption 1 is even on Nintendo Switch is something to me, because that game pushes the limits of the Nintendo Switch. It struggled on the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, so to be able to play it on Nintendo Switch is just incredible to me. So miracle port definitely with Red Dead Redemption. Sonic Origins is a game port that can't be missed, purely because it's the game that showcases the original Sonic games like 1, 2 and 3, And you actually have access to Sonic and Knuckles free on here, which is one of the best Sonic games there is. It was the introduction to Knuckles the character, it gave you the Super Emeralds. It was a more story-based game as well, like it felt like a bigger adventure than the two games before it, Sonic 1 and 2, which are also amazing games. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is often considered to be the greatest Sonic game ever. It's got some of the most iconic stages ever on it, like Chemical Plant Zone is so iconic, everybody knows that stage because one annoying part in Act 2 that everyone remembers because it's so annoying. Honestly, Sonic Origins, it gives you the opportunity to play as different characters as well that have never been in these games. For example, Amy Rose is able to be played in some of the games. There's just so many great games in Sonic Origins. While these are like old games and were released in the 90s, you know, they still play amazingly and are great fun. If you've ever played Sonic Mania, that game is full of homages and Easter eggs from the original games. Go play Sonic Origins because it's just that good. Continuing with Sonic, we've also got Sonic Colors Ultimate. Now, I will be honest, this port of the game isn't great. It's got a lot of optimization problems, so be aware of this. However, if you aren't bothered by that, Sonic Colors is actually a really fun game. Originally released on Nintendo Wii and moved over to Switch and PS5 and Xbox Series X. It's interesting because that game was originally a Nintendo Wii game and played with the Nintendo Wii controls, and it's obviously been changed. It's not the best Sonic game ever in my opinion, but it's still great for the style that it has, the funfair theme park theme it's got, the comedy in the cutscenes with Dr. Eggman, or Dr. Robotnik as he should be called. Sonic has had a hard time with 3D games, and Sonic Colors is actually one of the exceptions to that rule. Ni no Kuni, the Wrath of the White Witch. This is a Studio Ghibli inspired and published game using the art style of a Studio Ghibli movie. This game is a JRPG which focuses on the story of a child whose mother goes missing. He basically goes on this amazing adventure where he goes to this magical world to find his mother. And yes, while it's a very Studio Ghibli style game, if you've ever watched a Studio Ghibli movie, a lot of the movies consist of characters that are young, having almost kind of like vulnerable characters who end up losing something. Spirited Away is one of the greatest movies in my opinion ever. The whole concept of that movie is this little girl who ends up in this magical world. Her parents are turned into pigs, and she ends up having to go on this magical adventure to basically save them. It's basically what Studio Ghibli often is. They're very magical movies, very wonderful, lots of mystery behind them, and that's exactly what Ni no Kuni is. If you've never played Ni no Kuni, expect that. Expect this kind of like whole giant epic adventure into a JRPG anime style game. Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch is a must play for any anime fan in my opinion, especially Studio Ghibli fans. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD, another game with a huge mouthful. If you're a Persona fan and you're watching this video and you've never played Shin Megami Tensei, go play Shin Megami Tensei, because Shin Megami Tensei is the original series in the Persona series. Shin Megami Tensei is the series that spawned the Persona series, and if you've never played Shin Megami Tensei, go play it because there's more to the Persona universe than just Persona. Shin Megami Tensei is a more hardcore series in my opinion. It's a lot more difficult than Persona. Persona is kind of like Shin Megami Tensei Light, but yeah, I understand that a lot of people enjoy Persona because it's more approachable, probably easier to digest than Shin Megami Tensei is. But Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD is available on Nintendo Switch, and I feel like this game itself is a rare find. It's hard to find the original version of this game that was on the PS2, and it's great that it's been re-released for Nintendo Switch, because if you want to get into that kind of whole universe and lore of the Persona series and Shin Megami Tensei series, this is a great place to start, as it's kind of like the first real 3D adventure that really took the Shin Megami Tensei series to the next level. There's a reason this game was remastered, because everyone who's played Shin Megami Tensei kind of often says that this is the best in the series. That might be different now because Shin Megami Tensei 5 is out, and a lot of people consider that to be a really good game, and that's also on Nintendo Switch. But Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD is a great place to start if you want to learn more about the Megami Tensei series, I suppose. Get into it. It's a dungeon crawler with the JRPG style of, you use these personas, you use these monsters, you catch them. They are basically mons in this game that you use to fight with, and you have control it's a cool concept of a game. You know, if you've played Persona, just consider it as a more hardcore game than Persona, but it's in that same universe. The Star Wars Heritage Pack comes with, I believe, 7 games, and 2 of those games are the Knights of the Old Republic. So Knights of the Old Republic is on Nintendo Switch. This is the Star Wars MMO that is accessible for Nintendo Switch. Those games were extremely popular in the 2000s, so really do consider this. It also comes with Star Wars Pod Racer, I think. It was a N64 game. It would have been nice to have the Battlefront games on there as well, but they did get released later down the line, so consider them to be extras in this video, I suppose. The Battlefront 1 and 2 games. Often these Star Wars games are really considered to be great games. Star Wars is a series, a franchise that's actually had quite a lot of success with games in general. For example, Star Wars Rogue Squadron, which was on the GameCube, is incredible. That's a great game. I had a lot of fun playing that with my cousin back in the day. Obviously Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2, and then the later Battlefront games as well. Star Wars Force Unleashed as well, which is another game that is on the Heritage Pack. Star Wars Force Unleashed is great games if you want to play as a villain character, if you want to play as a Sith, an apprentice Sith, Darth Vader's apprentice. Star Wars The Heritage Pack is there. Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition is a game I've talked about on a different video before, and this is the definitive version of the game because it comes with the Nintendo 3DS version and the Wii U version of the game. So what I mean by that is this game originally was released in 2. It was really annoying back in the day when it was originally released, because if you wanted to play the full experience, you had to have both the 3DS version and the Wii U version, as they both came with different levels and different characters. For example, the 3DS version had Toon Link, whereas the Wii U version didn't have Toon Link. So what they've done is they've made the definitive pack and basically put both versions of the game into one for the Nintendo Switch version of this game. Hyrule Warriors is basically an action-adventure Warriors game. If you ever played Dynasty Warriors, it's a strategy game where you fight huge armies with one character and you have your own smaller army. You're basically very overpowered in these games. You can take on hundreds and hundreds of soldiers at a time and have no problem, and you get your special moves, and there's lots of different characters. The majority of the Zelda characters are in this game. The Hyrule Warriors is kind of like a concept game of bringing every single Zelda character from every single Zelda game and putting them into one game. It's interesting to see that kind of concept of mixing characters from different eras of the Zelda series, and yeah, it's cool. Like it's a cool concept. It's not an amazing game in my opinion, but it is still fun Dynasty Warriors style game with a Zelda skin. Next is Fatal Frame: The Maiden of Blackwater. This is a horror game that was originally released only on Nintendo Wii U. The reason it was a Wii U game in the first place was because it used the Wii U gamepad as a camera, and yet to use the motion controls to basically take photos, as that is the concept of the Fatal Frame games, is you kill ghosts by using a haunted camera. It's a really cool, weird concept, but it's interesting. I think it's fun. It's a great horror series, actually, very scary, I'll be honest with you. Fatal Frame is actually very interesting for the fact that compared to some of the other well-known horror franchises like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, I feel like Fatal Frame really goes above and beyond those games, because it really did, the first time playing through Maiden of Blackwater, put me on edge. For example, there's scenes where you pick something up, but like in that moment of picking things up, you see your hand grabbing for it, like you're slowly grabbing, and there's that tension build of, is something going to jump out at you? Like, is it going to happen? Like, you don't know. Like, it could happen at any moment. Or, for example, you're walking down a corridor and you see this doll sat there on a shelf, but it just looks like a normal doll, and then you turn around from it from 1 second and then you turn straight back and it's that doll has moved. Things like that that create atmosphere and storytelling through visual moments and making you feel on edge through the atmosphere of music and lack of it. Seeing things pop up on the screen while you're using your camera mode when you least suspect it. Like, that's kind of the brilliance of the concept of a game about photography in a horror world. I haven't played the Switch version, I'll be honest with you. I just know it's on Switch, so I don't know if the gyro controls on the motion controls are still there. Maybe they are, because Nintendo Switch does have that capability. Tokyo Mirage Sessions FE Encore. If you're not familiar with this game, it's basically its own spin-off game of the Fire Emblem series, originally released on the Wii U. It's a Fire Emblem spin-off with a crossover from the Persona Shin Megami Tensei series. I don't know if Nintendo have some kind of deal with Atlus when it comes to these games, because Persona isn't really mentioned in this game. Like, you don't see the Persona characters or the Persona series really mentioned. It's just got that gameplay, the Persona style gameplay, with the Fire Emblem action concept gameplay. You don't really see the Fire Emblem games mentioned as well in this game. It's just got that Fire Emblem concept of the strategy style gameplay. It kind of takes place in this like J-pop world where you play as a J-pop character. Idols, they call them, right? In Japan, that's what they are known as. They're not pop stars, they're idols. Almost like influencers, but also pop stars. That's an idol, if you're not familiar. It takes place in Tokyo. It's like Fire Emblem, it's like Persona, it's like Shin Megami Tensei. And that's basically what it is. It was Nintendo's idea of putting those two games together, and this is the baby that they made. So yeah, there you go. Oh, gosh, that was harder to talk about because some of these games I am not as familiar with compared to the first video I made of this. And if you are interested in carrying on and watching about 20 more ports, you can check out this video right there, right here, right under my arms right now. Check out that video, which is the first 20 games I mentioned about being Nintendo Switch ports you should play. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you for the next video. Bye!